Dear church, let's talk about the preacher and retirement. Dear church, let's talk Holy Spirit, transformation, prayer.
6 days, right?
And if you love me, you will keep my commandments. Our culture wants to define you by your sexuality. We know that our identity is now Christ. Hello and welcome to the Dear Church podcast. As always, I'm your host, Chris McCurley, joined by two great guys today, Nick Wolf, Jack Story. One I know very well, one I just met, but I'm so glad that you guys took time to be with us today. Jack, Nick, thank you and welcome.
Thank you. No, thank you for having us.
Absolutely. You know, it's not often that we have two guests on the same show, but you guys have an interesting story, and I want to start there. Talk a little bit about how you guys met and how you came to have this working relationship as well as friendship. I guess, Jack, start with you.
Yeah, I met Nick. Me and Nick met at UT Martin. We both played golf for UT Martin. We really met in my sophomore year, junior year. We started living together. And in that time period, I had some mini trials of my own. And Nick, who was my roommate, Nick can talk a little about his backstory. Nick was Catholic at the time, and I was the typical Southern Christian who, I believed in God, but didn't do anything in my daily life with it. And really had a crisis of belief brought by I really needed God based on the circumstances that I was then in. So me and Nick started seeking God together. We read the Bible in a year, following Adam Wainwright. Adam Wainwright did a daily reading that he posted on Twitter. And we followed that for a year. I think we both did it in about 370 days, so we didn't miss too many.
Yeah.
And we were off to the races from there, living together, reading the Bible together, just fellowshipping together every day.
Yeah, that's neat. Nick, talk a little bit about your story where, you and I have a similar background. I grew up Catholic as well. Talk a little bit about how you came into this.
Yeah, I think Jack's example was very accurate. When I got to UT Martin, it was really just that time, my junior year, when him and our other roommate Peyton had just said, "Hey, we're going to do this Bible in a year devotional together, and if you want to join, you can." And it really took a few months for me, and it was the start of 2020 when we did that. So it took a few months for me to actually enjoy and I guess want to be in the Word. It was a little bit of reluctance and feeling encouraged and accountable from my roommates, but at the end it ended up being a few months in, and the world was shutting down, and everything kind of seemed to be a little bit more peaceful to me in a time that for a couple of weeks there seemed a little hectic. So that was really one of the biggest things that started changing me and who I was and my beliefs, was just being in the Word a little bit more consistently, and being around good community with my roommates. And I started dating my girlfriend in 2019, and then so 2020 was some formative years for us and our relationship as well. So it was great, and it wasn't too bad, playing golf all the time with Jack and all those guys up at UT Martin. Yeah. So it was fun.
Yeah, and I don't play golf, but if I did, I wouldn't play with either one of you. But I especially wouldn't play with Jack because I know how he plays. He would kill me. But talk a little bit about kind of your personal life now. Jack is a member here at Walnut Street, married to one of our ladies that works in the office, to her daughter, Mary Lane, about to have a baby. So life is really on the up for you, Jack. But start with you, and then Nick, just talk about life in general, where you're at right now and what's going on.
Yeah, for me, life is moving pretty quick. We're trying to finish up some home projects. We are learning each day. I'm certainly learning as a husband. And I am making improvements. I told Marilyn the other day that, if you start at zero and you increase any, you're making improvements. So
sure,
working in that, getting encouraged by Nick and some other mentors that I have to dwell with her with understanding, and the life, we couldn't be more blessed, Marilyn and I. That all of the things that we have prayed for, God has certainly surpassed those, and super excited about our baby boy that's coming September 1st.
Yeah, that is exciting. Yeah, life is going to change for the better. That's awesome. Nick, how about you?
Yeah, I'd say we're not quite in the same, fast lane as Jack is over there, but I think we're definitely seeing lots of growth for Bella and I. I mean, 2.5 years in marriage now, and getting settled in the house and learning what that's like to paint cabinets for a whole weekend and still remain together after that experience. So those are our humps that we're going through right now. It seemed like through a lot of the course of college, Jack was about 1 year ahead of me. So I don't know what's in the Lord's will, but if we're 1 year behind, then maybe I could be in the same position as Jack this time next year. But we'll see what's coming in store. But everything's great on our end. And I don't know if I mentioned here in Murfreesboro, and we're members at New Vision Baptist Church here in Murfreesboro.
Okay. Yeah. So you guys ended up following kind of the same career path and in the same field. Do you guys work together on projects and things of that nature? I mean, I know you're two different entities. Jack with Benefits Inc. You with Raymond James. Are you guys crossing over a lot and talking to each other about investments and things like that when you're helping people?
I would say that with Jack being 1 year ahead, there was a lot of times when, and he had finished his MBA when I was still finishing undergrad. And then once my MBA was complete and I got into Raymond James, he was sort of heavily in that. I mean, he was neck deep in that 401k space. So any 401k question that we had, because that is one area where we really have a lot of overlap. Thankfully, we're not, at each other's necks
Competing.
or throats competing since we're in different areas. But there's certainly a little bit of that overlap where I've talked to Jack and I think we've been able to relate a lot. And, hey, what's it like, going through these different conversations, and he's had a very similar experience. So it is pretty cool having somebody that's, going through a lot of the same life experiences, but also career challenges and experiences as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. So let's dive into this discussion. I said it before, preachers, they don't typically have retirement through the church. Most churches just are not able to provide that. And, if it's someone like me, I started this journey 25 years ago, left the teaching profession where I had retirement, cashed that out because I wasn't going to build on it, and ended up buying a house with a down payment and started from zero again. And my head doesn't work that way. My brain doesn't work with those kind of numbers and stock market, and all of that is just Greek to me. So if you're someone starting out and you're trying to make sense of what can I do to help myself long-term in retirement, where do you even start with this?
Yeah, great question. And Nick and I have we meet with a ton of individuals, and I would just say, first off, that just because you don't feel, or it might seem Greek to you, that many individuals are in that same boat. And even Nick and I certainly were before we really went to school for this. So I would put that encouragement out there, and that anyone can certainly learn. But with that, the way that Nick and I, and we've talked about this many times, start with how we think a Christian should not only view retirement, or how they should start with viewing retirement, is understanding that, Psalm 24:1, the earth is the Lord's and everything in it, the world and all who live in it. Understanding that with money, retirement that we're discussing about, is ultimately God's. And so we are stewards of the wealth that he blesses us with. And we don't want to get the cart in front of the horse with retirement. So we want to understand that we're viewing we're viewing money the way that God calls us to. And with that, we certainly have to be stewards of what he gives us.
Yeah.
Nick, you want to talk about?
Yeah,
Very good
and
at this.
now, and I would say with that, I think especially, this podcast is called Dear Church, so a lot of listeners at your church or churches in the area, but we're all very used to and comfortable with hearing confess to one another, or apologize and seek forgiveness and all those different things for all these areas of our life, and nobody talks about money. Jesus talks about money constantly, or maybe not money, possessions, and how it impacts our heart. And we seem to, I think it's something that's a taboo topic. No one wants to know, or no one wants to ask what you make, ask what you spend, even though we kind of all have a pretty good idea of where everyone stands, even without asking. And so I think it's one of those areas that I'm kind of numb to asking about it. I ask people how much they make and how much debt they have and what they're spending on this, that, and the other every day. And so I take for granted the freedom. And sometimes I probably ask the question and catch somebody off guard. But it's just one of those areas where I think we don't talk about it enough. And so when you're getting into God's word and seeing that there are ways that maybe he's asking for our heart, not just our 10% tithe, and we can be more obedient in that way. To me, that's the one area where having this type of conversation is really important, because it's not always talked about in your small group. Hey, everybody, let's share our income and what our monthly balance or cash flow looks like.
Yeah, I had a gentleman many, many years ago in a church I was serving that got upset about something that was decided on by the shepherds, and he made the comment, "Well, I'll just withhold my money, my contribution." And this shepherd said to him, "Well, you're sinning, because it doesn't become the Lord's money when you give it to the church, right? It was his all along." To Jack's point. And so I like that approach, that you're taking it from the standpoint that this is not your money to begin with. And so therefore, investing it wisely, using it wisely has got to be of utmost importance. And so great place to start, right? Now, let's take that a step further. Jack, I'll go to you. So once you've started there, once you've sat down with someone, and Nick, I think that's a counseling principle that I have. I can't help you if you don't lay it all out on the table, right? So you can't help somebody if they're not telling you debt, income, all those kind of things. Just lay it all out on the table. So you have all that. Now, where are you guiding someone?
Yeah. Being aware of where your money is going is certainly one thing that I think many individuals take for granted. And they think if you ask them, they think they know where their money's going, but oftentimes they can't really even get in the range of what their utilities were last month, how much they spent on food and just other things, needs versus wants. And so I would encourage everyone to certainly track in a general way of where their money's going. And some people don't like the word budget because they feel like it's restrictive and they have to stress over it and it adds more anxiety to their lives. When I think of budget, what I'm really trying to say is just actually knowing where your money's going, and being aware. With that in mind, for individuals who don't have a retirement plan in place, they should certainly start an individual IRA and or Roth IRA, depending on if they're, I'm forgetting the term. I think we can cut this out, but if their household, if your household AGI is low enough, then you can do a Roth IRA. But certainly setting up one of those accounts, and now that one is aware of where their money is going, they can decide what they're even able to put into the traditional IRA or Roth IRA. And they should do that each paycheck and be very diligent in auto drafting from their bank account. So if you get paid on Friday, then on Friday as well, you're depositing that money by auto draft into the traditional IRA or Roth IRA.
Yeah. Yeah. And so by doing that, you don't really ever miss it, right? Because it's in and it's out. And that's kind of the whole idea is pay yourself first, get that taken out so that, it's just a part of your, like you said, your budget, and and it comes, it leaves, and you never have to worry about it. Nick, what talk a little bit about, and this may be a better question for Jay, but talk a little bit about the difference in like a Roth IRA, 401k. I hear a lot nowadays about mutual funds and money markets and things like that. Is this about diversity? Is this about one's better than the other? I mean, what are we looking at here?
One's always going to be better than the other, but it's not going to be always better than the other in every situation and circumstance, is how I would say. So the 401k or 403b or TSP, all three of those are employer-sponsored retirement plans. So those are going to be retirement plans available to you if it's offered by your employer. So 401k plan, 403b, and through a savings plan that's through federal employers. So those all operate in a very similar way. So if someone's upset they don't have a 401k because they have a 403b, they're very similar. You're going to get some sort of, in most cases, some sort of matching contribution from your employer. In most cases, a 4% match on a 5% contribution. Anything that you put in the plan is always going to be yours. It'll be invested long term, and the point of that is that over time with inflation, we all don't want to work for the rest of our life. So if we can at some point maybe dial back or spend our time in a way that we're passionate about, and you don't have to rely on that income each month to cover all expenses, but maybe you have some pool of money to supplement that. So that's the purpose of the retirement plans. And the 401k, 403b, or TSP, through a savings plan, those are all going to be from the employer. And now Roth IRA or traditional IRA, those are going to be individual retirement accounts, essentially. So you could open those up at your bank, at a online platform like a Vanguard or Schwab, something like that, or obviously work with an advisor like we're at Raymond James. That's where we work with the client as well. So those retirement accounts are going to be separate from your employer plan, and there's different limits, and it's going to be pretty difficult to go through all the numbers and limits for anyone to actually follow. But if you have a retirement plan available, that's the first place you want to go. If you're maybe maxing that out, or you're looking to have funds elsewhere for whatever reason, then talking to somebody is going to be a good way to figure out if it's actually right for you to do that. But that's where they come into place. But the main difference between a Roth IRA and a traditional IRA is how they're taxed. So the Roth IRA, you're going to pay a tax now, but you won't pay a tax in the future. Traditional IRA, it's pre-tax now, so you'll actually have more take-home pay, more money to fund into the budget, and then you will pay taxes down the road at distribution. So one's not always better than the other. Income is going to be a big influence on that, but also someone's cash flow and what their budget looks like and their budgeting needs, that's going to impact one way or the other too.
And for
Yeah.
younger individuals, to add on to that, they've heard that Roth IRA is better. I mean, it's almost like a buzzword. For younger individuals, the theory behind why Roth could be better is because the earnings, that the contributions that you put in grow over the years through compound interest, and the earnings are not taxed whenever you pull it out. So you're paying the tax now. You're making a deal with Uncle Sam that if I pay the tax now, when I put it in the account, I won't owe any tax later, even on the money that my contribution earns. Whereas the pre-tax option, you're not paying the taxes now. So for a quick example, if you, over the course of your life, put $100,000 into a pre-tax IRA and it grows to $300,000, well, you owe tax on all $300,000.
Yeah.
With a Roth IRA, if you put $100,000 in over your lifetime and it grows to $300,000, you don't owe any tax. So you get the $200,000, the gain, tax free.
Okay.
And for younger individuals, the reason why it's typically better for them to do Roth is because they have more years for compound interest to work in their favor.
Yeah, makes sense. So let me ask you this. There are so many young preachers that I know that they get out of school, they have quite a bit of debt from school. Maybe their wife went to school as well with them and she's got debt. They want their wife to stay home and raise the kids, and they're going to work at a church. Typically, their first job, a church of around anywhere from 120 to 250 perhaps, maybe even smaller, maybe a little bigger. But typically, you don't get out of school and jump into a church of 1,000 people, which we don't have a whole lot of those anyway, right? And so they're struggling sometimes to make ends meet. And so to say, hey, with all that you have to, all the debt you have to settle, you also need to put $300 a month into this IRA or whatever. And it's just daunting to them. It's kind of like the Dave Ramsey concept. I really appreciate folks like Dave Ramsey, but it seems like to me when I listen to him, you've got to have all this money to even get to where he wants you to get to right on the front end. And so like a lot of people don't have that. So what would your advice be for someone starting out that just feels like this is such a monumental task that they don't even have a way to do so?
Well, I'll say in that situation, a young pastor or any young individual, young family, you have time on your side. Like Jack said, the earlier you're getting started, the more compounding interest is going to be in your favor. And that's why it's important to either, pull up a financial calculator or talk to someone who knows how to use one and just see the power
Yeah.
of $100 a month or $50 a month and starting young.
Yeah.
If what we do with the little is what we'll do with the lot. So if you don't save with the little that you have now, when you're making, you know, 2 or 3 or 4 times what you're currently making, you're not going to automatically just become a great saver. So if you get consistent with putting a little bit of the money back, and it doesn't have to be toward retirement. If you're paying off debt and it's, high interest credit card debt, I'm not going to recommend putting money in the market when you can get a guaranteed 20% savings on a credit card interest rate. So it's not always about getting money at retirement immediately. It's thinking about what's going to be best for you in the next 10, 20, 30 years. In some cases, it is just paying off that debt or building up an emergency fund so that you can then start saving and not be derailed at the next, home project that comes up or HVAC unit that goes out. So
Yeah.
that to me is where I would say to start first is if we're not starting or getting in the habit of that principle of putting money back for whatever expense is coming up, making a list of your main goals is a great place to start where you can see, I can't even afford, my medical deductible if something were to come up, or I can't afford the expenses to update our nursery because we're a new expecting family. Those are the types of things, or if you can start the principle of putting money back, once you get past those or your income starts to increase, now you're at this point where you're thinking, I'm used to saving 10%. I can put money toward retirement because I was saving 10% last year, got a 2% raise, and I can put that money somewhere else. But if we just say, I don't have enough money to save at all of a sudden you look back and 10 years later, you're making 5 times more than you did and you're still saying the same thing. So
Yeah.
it's easier to continue that habit if you just start now, even if it is a few dollars a month.
That's a good point. Yeah. When we talk about retirement, a lot of times you'll hear this word diversity and need to diversify portfolio, things of that nature, build your portfolio. Jack and I have had this discussion because he's handling much of my stuff or advising me about my stuff. And, you've mentioned it just a while ago, but an emergency fund and, we've already mentioned, whether it's a 401k, Roth, whatever it is. But talk about the different buckets or the different categories that, will set you up well going forward, like an emergency fund, like a retirement, but other things that are important to think about when you talk about diversity or diversifying.
Yeah, especially for those pastors who might be a little closer to retirement. Um, it it would be to their benefit to certainly discuss and have a conversation with an advisor to look at their portfolio, making sure that they're not invested too aggressively. Younger
Mhm.
individuals, especially in IRAs, the federal government has some restrictions on when you can access that money, so you have time on your side. You can be really aggressive when you're young because you're not going to be able to really even touch this money till you're 59 and a half if it's in 401k IRA. Um, but with those that are older, they should certainly be aware of their portfolio. I'll oftentimes encourage some younger individuals not to look at it too often.
Mhm.
Don't get too upset if it goes down or up. But the older individuals should certainly be aware of how they're invested. They do not want to be invested aggressively to where they're taking a fair risk when they might need this money very soon. So having a portion of that money invested conservatively, certainly having some money still invested that can continue to earn interest, but being aware of the way that we typically handle that and will advise individuals is to look at time periods. And so know how much you spend, know how much you need, and for 5 to 7 years, parcel out some of that money into a conservative place so that you know that if the market goes down, that portion of money is invested conservatively. Many times it could be a money market, it could be in bonds, it could be in CDs. And then the remaining part of your portfolio there that you have saved diligently over the years can be invested more aggressively than what I just mentioned, so that it's continuing to earn interest. You certainly don't want to be extremely aggressive with all of it, and you certainly don't want to be extremely conservative with all of it. You want to still utilize the market to earn interest in your favor.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah,
when you
Nick,
retire, you don't need all that you have saved on that day.
right.
Uh, yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. And what you said is something that it's a practice that I have, you know, for many, many years have believed in, and that is don't look at it. You know, I just, you hear about how bad the stock market is today or how good it is. I just don't look at it. I'm in it for the long haul. I'm not even considering pulling it out until I'm 65 or whatever. So I'm not even looking at it. But, you know, I'm getting a little older, and the older I get, the more it seems to pique my interest when I hear, you know, that it's down or whatever. And so, yeah, you get a little more nervous the older you get, because this is kind of my livelihood, right? And so it does make sense that you wouldn't put all your eggs in one basket, but, you know, actually have it spread out a little bit. You know, Nick, let me ask you, when you're sitting down with a client and you're kind of walking them through things, you guys talked about your strategy. You want to start with, you know, this is God's money, and so how can we be good stewards of it and all of that? Are you are you looking at with a client, you know, this is where you're at today, and this is where we're trying to get you to, and, you know, this is what you're going to need specifically to retire at this day and time? Or are you just kind of giving an overall, you know, 30,000 foot view of, you know, how specific are you getting with these folks?
Yeah, so certainly that is exactly what we're doing. We're looking at Social Security. We're looking at what they've saved. We're looking at any other sources of income they might have. And a general rule of thumb for those who are a little further away from retirement is 80% of your income now you will need in retirement.
Okay.
And that is through a sources of many things. So you won't be paying for health insurance then. You'll be on Medicare. Also, your tax bracket will be lower. And so generally the 80%, you should have less debt when you're retired. That's really where the 80% comes from instead of all of your pre-retirement income. So 80%, and then looking at a 30-year period. So if someone retires when they're 65 and they live to be 95, that'd be 30 years. And a general rule of thumb is you can pull out 4% per year of what you've saved in order to ensure that there is money still in that account in year 30, 31. If you take on more than the 4%, if you start pulling out 6% a year, you run a risk of running out of money before the 30 years is over. And so when looking at someone's income, looking at what they'll get from Social Security, looking at what they have saved, you can certainly do a calculation and see what your retirement income would be that you're really paying yourself along with Social Security. And that's a great test that individuals should do, especially in their 50s and 60s, to see, should I save more now? Should I increase my contribution to my 401k IRA? Should I start contributing to an HSA? Because those dollars, they can certainly be used for health expenses. But when you're 65, you can use those dollars for retirement as well.
Yeah.
So that's a way that if someone is contributing to a traditional IRA and they're maxing out, they're doing the 7,500, but they want to do more, they could contribute to an HSA as well.
Yeah. Yeah, I like that. And health savings account is what you mean by HSA, just to let
Yes.
everybody know. And, you know, we're using terminology here that I know exactly what you mean. I think most people do, but just, you know, clarifying. It really does turn your brain to oatmeal if you think about it long enough. And I'm glad that we have people like you. I had a gentleman tell me one time who was very, very crafty when it came to all this kind of stuff. And he handled and managed all of his own stuff. And he said, you know, do you have somebody helping you with this, like an advisor? And I said, yes. And he said, well, why would you want to pay them? Why would you not just want to manage your own? And I said, because I don't have an idea what I'm doing. I have no clue of what I'm doing. And so I need trusted people like Jack Story to help me in that. So let's we lost Nick. That's the thing about technology. It's great when it works, right? But maybe he pops back on here. But as we wrap this thing up, Jack, just what is like one thing, if you could boil it all down, one or two things that you would want somebody to know about retirement, especially a preacher, and they're planning for it, what's like one thing that you would want them to know before they jump into this?
Yeah, I would tell them to certainly keep at the forefront of their mind that it is God's, that we are trusting in Him for our daily bread. And it can be very easy to look at your bank account, look at your retirement, and to really have some stress and anxiety about it because you want more.
Yeah.
But understanding that He is in control, and what we can do as stewards is to really understand where our money's going, and then spend less than we make, invest what we can, and certainly review the plan each year. And, a lot of individuals, as Nick referred to earlier, as their income increases, their spending also increases. And keeping that in mind, it would set people in a great situation to prepare for retirement.
Yeah. Man, thank you so much, Jack, for joining me today. And thank Nick, wherever he ended up. We appreciate him joining us too. And I want to tell our listeners and viewers that if you have a question about today's episode, you can email me at chris.mccurley@rippleoflight.com. And any specific question for Nick or Jack, we will forward on to them. And I'm sure they would be more than willing to answer any question you might have. Jack, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you, Chris.
Yeah, and thanks for your work. And, we'll tell Nick thank you as well if we see him again. But, I also want to thank everyone for tuning in today. And until next time, may the Lord bless you and keep you. Sincerely, Chris.